everybody, I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is 2024 presidential contender Larry Elder. Larry, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Brittany, it is my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course, you were not on the debate stage last night. The debate did happen, but you said earlier this week you plan to sue the RNC and file an FEC complaint against them after they said you didn't meet the qualifications to be on stage. Break down that action for us a little bit.
So, Brittany, you notice I wasn't on the stage last night. I met all the criteria, 40,000 individual donations, 200 had to come from 20 different states. We exceeded that. The problem is I needed to file 3 polls where I was at least at 1%. We did. After I did it, I get a phone call from Ronna McDaniel and the debate czar, David Bossie. I'm sorry, Larry, one of the polls you submitted, we can't use. I said, why? And they said it's the Rasmussen poll. It is, quote, affiliated with the Donald Trump campaign, close quote. And I said, assuming that is true, what does it have to do with me? And they said, well, any campaign that's affiliated with a poll, that poll we can't use. I said, the same poll, Rasmussen, that you guys quote all the time, the same poll, Rasmussen, that was the most accurate one in 2016, you can't use it? They said yes. A few hours later, Brittany, on Twitter, Rasmussen puts a tweet and says, Trump had nothing to do with our poll, did not authorize it, did not commission it, did not even recommend it, and there's no reason why Larry Elder cannot use our poll as one of the official polls necessary for him to meet his criteria. Also, after we found out that they were not going to use Rasmussen, we submitted another poll that had me above 1%, but they said, well, you submitted that one too late. We wouldn't have submitted it late had we known you were going to disqualify one of the polls that we put up there. My lawyer is the former chair of the Federal Elections Commission, and he says the FEC sets forth the rules for debates, and once you set forth your criteria, you have to apply that criteria objectively to every single person. His argument is failing to do that made the RNC essentially give an in-kind contribution to the 8 people who made it, and furthermore, makes Fox News also essentially giving an in-kind contribution to these 8 people, so that our lawyer argues that this could subject them to a fine of $100 million to the RNC and to Fox News. And we threatened if I was not on that stage by 2 o'clock yesterday, we were going to drop the complaint. The complaint now going to be filed at 2 o'clock local time. I thought cooler heads were going to prevail. I assume that because Fox News, for example, is a publicly held corporation and they have a fiduciary obligation to avoid any unnecessary expense, I thought they put pressure on the RNC if the RNC didn't see the light of day on their own to put me up there, but they did not. So now we're going forth with this complaint, which we're filing, as I said, at 2 o'clock local time, and I'm still in Milwaukee right now. Not only was I barred from the debate, I was barred from the debate venue. They posted a notice and told security if Elder or Elder's campaign showed up, don't let him in. So what am I now, a terrorist?
I did see that an NBC correspondent posted a photo of a flyer-looking document that said certain people and campaigns were barred from the entire venue, spin room and the venue. The entire Larry Elder campaign was on that. What do you make of that?
You tell me. I believe the fix is in. I believe the RNC wants Ron DeSantis to win, and I think that they felt that if I were there, I would have upstaged them, perhaps, or brought forth some issues that the Republican Party is uncomfortable talking about. For example, the #1 social problem in America is the epidemic of fatherlessness. By the way, Vivek mentioned it and even used the term epidemic of fatherlessness. I have been on venues with Vivek many times in Iowa and in New Hampshire, and he's never mentioned it. In fact, he told me once, if I don't make the debate stage, will you endorse me? I said, I can't say that, but I will say this. If I don't make the debate stage, please mention the epidemic of fatherlessness and say that my good friend Larry Elder has been bringing that topic to the center. He mentioned epidemic of fatherlessness, didn't mention Elder. And I'm semi-okay with that because I want them to start talking about the issue. And I want whoever the front runner is to focus on it, and hopefully the Democrats will and the media will. But it's a little annoying to push and push and push this issue for years, as I have, and then it's mentioned verbatim what I've been saying without any kind of attribution. The other issue I think I make them feel uncomfortable about is this. The Democrats, particularly people like Joe Biden, have constantly pushed the notion that America remains systemically racist. Biden gave a talk at a commencement speech at Howard University and said the number one threat to the homeland was, wait for it, white supremacy. That's nonsense. And this kind of notion is getting people killed. It's called the Ferguson effect or the George Floyd effect. And that, Brittany, is a phenomenon of cops pulling back from their normal proactive policing all over America. As a result, there are thousands of excess casualties, including people who are dead, who otherwise wouldn't be dead if the police weren't maligned that way. Also, the George Floyd or the Black Lives Matter riots of May of 2020. 35 people killed, 2,000 police officers wounded, $2 billion of property damage, all because of this lie that what happened to George Floyd, however you feel about it, had to do with his race. The lead black prosecutor never even intimated that what happened to George Floyd was because of his race. Officer Derek Chauvin was never charged with a hate crime, yet you had protests, the most deadly protests, widespread protests in the history of America, all because of a lie that what happened to George Floyd had to do with his race. I say stuff like that, it makes them feel uncomfortable. And then you have this meltdown of K through 12 education, Brittany, where, just to pick one city, Baltimore, I kid you not, there were 13 public high schools in Baltimore where 0% of the kids can do math at grade level. The Democrats oppose school choice because their largest funder is the teachers union, even as the party elites, whether it's Barack Obama or Gavin Newsom or Joe Biden, have their own kids in private school. And I'm talking about an amendment to fix spending to a certain percentage of the GDP, with exceptions for war and for natural disaster. Otherwise, government gets bigger and bigger, whether a Republican is in office or a Democrat is in office. And I think these kinds of things makes the establishment Republicans feel just a little uncomfortable.
Larry, you and I broke this all down in a conversation last month, which I recommend all of our viewers watch. You mentioned the first comment that we were talking about. You said fatherlessness in America is the top problem in America. You talked about systemic racism. So I urge all of our viewers to watch that conversation. I do want to get back to the debate. You said before that it was rigged. And in this conversation, you said you think the RNC wants Ron DeSantis to win. Why would they want that?
I think that they feel incorrectly that Donald Trump, if he's nominated again, cannot win. I don't think Donald Trump was ever favored by the party elites. They don't like his style. They think that he insults people. They think that he's vulgar. Remember that Mitt Romney in 2016 referred to him as vulgar, even used that word. So I don't think they've ever felt comfortable with this blue-collar billionaire who has had this bond with regular working-class Democrats. The party has become increasingly more elite, run by the elites. And even though Donald Trump is a multi-billionaire, he's nobody's elite. So I think they've always felt uncomfortable with him. And they've always felt that I think that Ron DeSantis is a calmer, cooler, more collected guy, and therefore more acceptable to the so-called swing voters. I don't agree with that analysis, but I think that's what they think.
I'm curious, has the RNC responded to the news that you were going to file an FEC complaint against them?
They did not. We gave them a deadline by 2 o'clock yesterday that we were going to file their complaint. And I assumed that Fox would put enough pressure on them for them to change their mind, or they would see the light of day themselves and change their minds, but they did not. We have not heard anything. The complaint hasn't been filed yet. It won't be filed for a few more hours, and then we'll find out. But no matter what they do, I'm going to try to make that debate in September at the Ronald Reagan Library. You have to have 50,000 individual donors. We already have exceeded that, and you have to get 3% in the polls. Hard to do that when I wasn't on the stage last night to elevate my stature, but I'm doing a lot of media. I think a lot of people recognize that I have been shafted by the RNC. They don't like the way the RNC is trying to eliminate somebody like Larry Elder, who ran for governor. I became the front runner right away on the replacement side. I got 3.5 million votes. I got in with just 8 weeks in the campaign. I raised $27 million. The candidate that the party wanted, both in the state and federal, was a guy named Kevin Faulkner, the two-term mayor of San Diego. Brittany, I carried San Diego County by 30 points. I was a grassroots guy, and I was not beholden to anybody, and I think I made them feel uncomfortable in California. I think I make them feel uncomfortable nationwide.
You're not the only contender to criticize the RNC, especially those who didn't make the stage. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to talk to Will Hurd, and he was criticizing the RNC as well. So what do you want to come out of this complaint, come out of this action? What would be your ideal scenario? How would you like the RNC to respond?
Well, I can't comment on anybody else. All I know is what my campaign did, and we met the criteria. Let me say this too. The whole idea by the criteria is to make sure just because you have a barbecue grill and you want to run for president, you don't deserve to be up there on that stage. I get that. But one of the candidates who was up there offered a $20 gift certificate for a $1 donation. Another candidate who was up there offered a commission to people to go out and get additional donors. And one of the other candidates offered a free, air quotes, country western concert if you made a $1 contribution. Now, these kinds of things seem to be corrupt, if not illegal, and it undermines the whole integrity of the idea of having criteria to establish and to make sure that you're a viable candidate. If you're offering people basically a bribe, a $20 bribe to give you a $1 donation, it just seems incredibly, incredibly corrupt to me.
Reportedly, the RNC is making the requirements to get onto the second debate stage next month even higher. Do you think they need to maybe remake those rules, maybe make them a little more clear so there isn't this criticism, this confusion ahead of the next debate?
Absolutely, and you're right. They are changing the criteria, making it more high, as you put it, 3% from 1%. But what they need to clarify is what polls are acceptable and which ones are not. If I had known the Rasmussen poll was not acceptable, we'd have gone a different route. So it seems to me they need to clarify what polls are acceptable and which ones are not, so that this does not happen again. And we're sending them a letter to make sure that this does not happen again, to clarify exactly what polls are acceptable and which ones are not.
Multiple Republican candidates said before the debate that if a contender doesn't make the debate stage, they should drop out. What do you make of that?
Well, I was said to me the last time around. Somebody quoted Chris Christie and said, if you don't make the debate stage, anybody that does not make the debate stage in Milwaukee ought to drop out. I'm not taking political advice from Chris Christie. Thank you very much. I'll make my own decision. As long as I feel that my momentum is going and our contributions have never been higher, there's never been a greater interest in my candidacy than right now. I think a lot of people feel that I got shafted by the RNC, and I don't believe I'm going to have any difficulty getting the 3% to qualify for the Ronald Reagan Library debate. I'm from California, so this is going to be on my home turf. I will see you in September, and game on, hold my beer.
So you're confident you will be on that debate stage in a month?
I am, and I think they need to hear what I have to say. As I said, the epidemic of fatherlessness, the lie that America remains systemically racist, the need for school choice in urban America, the need for an amendment to the Constitution to fix spending to a certain percentage of the GDP, a method to get rid of these soft on crime, George Soros-backed DAs. These are the kinds of proposals that I am putting forth. Also, an executive order to stop the graft and corruption on the part of the family of the president and vice president, whether that family is a Republican or a Democrat. Harry Truman said, when you go into politics broke like Biden and you come out rich, you're stealing. We need to do something about that. I think all these kinds of things are things that Larry Elder is bringing to the table, and I think it makes many of the party leaders on the GOP side very, very uncomfortable. They're just going to have to be uncomfortable because I'm not going anywhere.
What's the pathway to victory here? Because as you know, being on that debate stage really elevates someone's national status. It provides a lot of make or break viral moments for candidates. So where do you see yourself growing within the next month?
Well, again, I intend to make the debate at the Ronald Reagan Library, and if I perform as I expect to perform, that will make or break what happens going forward. Again, there's nobody out there talking about the issue that I'm talking about. Been talking about them for decades. I have a proven record of being a conservative, a pro-life guy, 40 years on radio and on television, been writing a column since April of 1998. It won't be hard to find out what Larry's views are on everything. I've written about 1,200 columns, a New York Times bestseller. I've got another book coming out about the damage that California can do to the rest of the country if we don't stop people like Gavin Newsom. It's called As Goes California, My Mission to Rescue the Golden State and Save the Nation. As you can see, Brittany, my goals are modest.
There was another contender that was not on the stage last night, and that was former President Donald Trump. What do you make of him not appearing on the debate stage?
Well, it's just politics 101. When you have a commanding lead, you don't debate. A and B. There was a demolition derby last night, and if Donald Trump had been there, he would have taken shots from a whole bunch of other people. Our focus should be on the Biden-Harris administration, not on Donald Trump. I did not like the way Donald Trump was referred to as an insurrectionist by the others. And when I become president, one of my first things is to pardon Donald Trump. And somebody last night in the stage said, well, you can't pardon somebody unless there's been a conviction. Well, Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon before there was any kind of conviction whatsoever. So that simply isn't true. There's a two-tier system of justice. Donald Trump has been badly treated. Hillary was treated differently. Joe Biden has been treated differently. Hunter Biden was given kid glove treatment. And I don't blame Donald Trump for refusing to go to that debate. I would have made the same decision. By the way, when I ran for governor, I did not debate any of my Republican opponents. I was a front runner far and away. I got 49% of the replacement vote. The next highest person got 9%, and that was a Democrat. I spent my time trying to get Gavin Newsom to debate me. It's a little irritating that Sean Hannity put pressure on Gavin Newsom to debate Ron DeSantis when nobody on Fox, to my knowledge, put any pressure on Gavin Newsom to debate Larry Elder during the recall election when it mattered.
It sounds like you did watch the debate last night. I know that you tweeted about Vivek Ramaswamy's fatherlessness comment, but I'm curious, what did you think of the debate overall?
Again, I thought it was a demolition derby. I did not see any reason why people went after Vivek. I did not see any reason why Vivek referred to all the politicians as him being the only one not bought and paid for. Pretty insulting for people who ran for office and presumably want the same interests, what's best for the country as he wants. So I think it gave a lot of ammunition for Biden-Harris to use in video assault ads against whoever the eventual nominee is. Again, our focus ought to be on what Joe Biden has done to this country. The 7-8 million people who are in the country illegally, the war on oil and gas that's caused gas prices to go up, the reckless spending that's caused our debt rating now to go down. This is what we ought to be focusing on, not chewing up each other. I didn't chew up any of my Republican opponents when I ran for governor, did not say a single negative thing about any of them. If they had returned the favor and kept saying, I'm not going to criticize Larry Elder because the goal is Gavin Newsom, then maybe the first part of the recall, which is, do you want Gavin Newsom recalled, would have succeeded. So I'm going to adhere to the same principle. I'm going to put my fire on Gavin, on Joe Biden, and on Kamala Harris. And trust me, if Joe Biden cannot fog up a mirror, it's going to be Kamala Harris. They are stuck with her. The Democratic Party is all about identity politics. One of the reasons that she is the VP is because she's a black female. And Gavin Newsom, when it appeared that Dianne Feinstein might not finish out her term, he said he's going to appoint a black female. James Clyburn, when he decided to support Joe Biden for the South Carolina primary, extracted a promise from him that the first nominee be a black female. So it's all about identity politics. And if Kamala Harris is kicked to the side for some white dude like Mayor Pete or Gavin Newsom, the Democrats in the first Democrat primary, South Carolina, majority of them are black voters. They will be livid. And the majority of those are black female voters, and they love Kamala Harris, and they will resent it. They won't vote Republican. They just won't vote, thereby guaranteeing whoever our nominee is, he or she will win. They can't run that risk. So if it's not Joe Biden, it's going to be Kamala Harris. Trust me.
Do you think there was too much infighting on that stage last night then?
I do. Again, I don't see any reason why Vivek was attacked the way he was attacked. I don't see any reason why Vivek felt the need to say, I'm the only one who's not bought and paid for. And I believe that all of them should recognize that the two-tier system of justice, that Hunter Biden got a sweetheart deal. Fortunately, the judge threw it out. Joe Biden is still under investigation for having documents in 4 or 5 different places, claims that he turned over the documents voluntarily. If that's true, then why is the investigation still going on? Why is there no investigation into the 51 former intelligence officials who signed that letter claiming the Hunter Biden laptop story had, quote, all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation, close quote, that clearly changed the election? Why isn't there some investigation about the $419.5 million that Mark Zuckerberg spent on Democrat election officials to help Democrat turnout in 2020 and hurt Donald Trump? These are the kinds of things that, in my opinion, we ought to be talking about, but we're not. Hillary Clinton referred to Donald Trump for 4 years as having stolen the election, her word, not mine, called him illegitimate, her word, not mine, to the point where 2/3 of Democrats falsely believe the Russians changed vote tallies to elect Donald Trump. Jay Johnson, Obama's DHS secretary, testified under oath. The Russians tried, but they failed to change a single vote tally. Yet 2/3 of Democrats, a supermajority, believe the Russians did. In other words, Brittany, a greater percentage of Democrats believe 2020 was stolen, 2016 was stolen rather, than we feel that way about 2020. But nobody brings up this double standard. I would if I had been there.
We are looking forward to hopefully you coming back on as your campaign continues. But what's next for your campaign aside from preparing to hopefully be on that stage in a month?
What's next is for me to continue doing interviews with people like you. I'm going to be back in Iowa. I'm going to be back in New Hampshire. I'm giving speeches. I'm giving town halls. I'm holding fundraisers. I am campaigning 24/7, and that's what I'm going to be doing between now and September to get to that 3% so that you can see me up there and you can see how I'm going to make a difference in this campaign. Even if I'm not the nominee, if I can elevate some of the issues I just now mentioned front and center, I will feel that I've given back to my party, and more importantly, Brittany, I will feel that I've given back to my country.
Larry Elder, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. Best of luck.
And please go to LarryElder.com because now I've incurred an unexpected legal expense, so I'm going to need your help. LarryElder.com. Thank you so much, Brittany, for having me. God bless.